Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and today we're going to continue our study entitled Kings and Emperors, and we're going to talk a bit about Herod the Great. Herod the Great is dead um, for most of the New Testament. He's alive when Jesus is born, which is quite clear from the birth narratives, because he plays a key role in the birth narratives. But he looms large until the destruction of Jerusalem because he is known as Herod the Great not because he was a great man, as Cyrus the Great was a great man, but because of his massive building projects. And like many martinets and despots around the world and through the centuries, understand if you keep building things, whether those things are useful or not, you artificially spur on your economy for a short period of time, and people think things are good and things are moving in the right direction, and that helps you hold on to power. The other thing that helps you hold on to power is ruthlessness. And if we are counting people who are great at that, he's one of the great men in history as well, because few men have been as completely ruthless as Herod is. And we know this not just from the New Testament, but also from history. Herod was born sometime in the 70s BC, right around the time, or before, I should say, the Romans took control. But that happened when he was a boy. His father, who was an Idumean and who was a ruler of the Idumeans, and if Idumean sounds a bit like Edomite, that's because that's what they are. The Idumeans are Edomites. His father was an Edomite. His mother was a Nabatean, which means she was an Arab. She was from people from the Arabian Peninsula. Herod is not a Jew. Not in any way, shape, or form is Herod a Jew, although he was raised as a Jew by his father, and he was circumcised as a Jew. But ethnically, he is in no way a Jew. His wives, he had 3 wives, were Jews, and therefore his children, matrilineally, are considered Jews by the Jews themselves of Jesus' day and to this day. But he himself is an Edomite and an Arab, ethnically, not a Jew in any way. His father befriended Julius Caesar, and and therefore was able to retain power when the Romans came through, and to hand that power down to Herod, to his son. Whenever Julius Caesar was assassinated, Herod at first sided with Mark Antony because he had close ties to Cleopatra in Egypt as well. But that was the losing side. And so when the writing was on the wall, to borrow an image from the book of Daniel, and he knew that his friends were going to lose, he switched to the other side and became wholeheartedly a supporter of the second triumvirate and Octavian among the three. And therefore, when Octavian became Caesar Augustus, Herod had a very solid position. When he had the opportunity to marry Mariamne, the Hasmonean king's daughter, and therefore receive for himself the title of king, he did. Problem was he already had a wife. He banished his first wife and his son and came to deny their existence so that he could wear the title king. And he was permitted by Augustus to could continue to wear that title, even though he was a king as a vassal, clearly a vassal to the Roman Empire. That was fine with him. He was given a free hand to dominate Palestine, and dominate Palestine he did. He built everything everywhere. Um, you can't drive through West Virginia north to south, east, or west without seeing Robert C. Byrd, our old senator who served for, I think, 117 years in the Senate, without seeing his name on something or almost everything. And Palestine was about like that. He built whole cities, Caesarea Maritima, which became such an important city. He built fortresses, nearly impregnable fortresses like Masada. And of course, he turned Jerusalem, and particularly the temple compound into a show place that was a tourist destination in the Roman Empire. If he thought you were disrespectful, or he started to fear that you were more popular or starting to gather a little bit of power, he had you killed and murdered. He didn't care if you were his own children. He he may have murdered more, but he certainly murdered two of his sons, had them murdered. He had Aristobulus drown in a swimming pool. That was the kind of guy he was, and that's certainly the guy we meet. We meet him near the end of his life, 2 or 3 years before he dies, in Matthew, the second chapter, with the story of the wise men. They come to Herod. They've followed the star. They know there's a king born. Herod, we see how slick and wily he is, how he pretends to be everyone's friend, so that he can stab them in the back. He does find out they know where the Messiah is going to be born. Bethlehem sends them on the right path, but the Lord warns them, and they go home by another way and don't let him know where the child is. And therefore, and then Mary and Joseph are warned to flee to Egypt, which they do. And so by the time Herod realizes they're not coming back, the only option left for him is to kill every child under the age of 2, every boy under the age of 2 in Bethlehem, which he sends his troops to do, and they do, which fulfills his prophecy in Jeremiah, Rachel weeping for her children. Rachel, by the way, is buried in Bethlehem. I don't know if you remember that from the Old Testament, but that's where she's buried. And so this episode from Herod in the New Testament really bears out what we know historically about Herod. So anyway, when Herod dies and his son Archelaus briefly takes the throne, Jesus' family hears that he's dead. They think it might be safe to move back, and they do. He had a violent death in the city of Jericho. He turned Jericho, by the way, into a show place. It sounded like what Lebanon used to be, Beirut, Lebanon used to be in the 50s, 60s, before all the turmoil. It was just a garden city, one of the most beautiful spots on earth, and it was that when Jesus was alive. And he had a home there, a palace there in Jericho. He had some sort of an internal issue that gave him stabbing pain, threw him into convulsions, gave him abdominal cramps, and made him, have terrible episodes in which he bled and vomited and had diarrhea, and it went on, and he tried to commit suicide. He tried to stab himself to death, and his loyal family and his loyal retainers would stop him from doing that. And finally, after suffering for a long time, for evidently weeks and weeks, he finally did. When he became basically just an emaciated bag of bones and skeleton, he finally did die. And we don't believe. I don't believe, it's not anywhere in Scripture, in the notion of karma. But we do believe that a man reaps what he sows. And so I think he met a fitting end. I think we would all agree with that. So anyway, that's Herod the not so great, depending upon the chart you're looking at. Okay, next time we're together, we're going to talk about Herod Antipas, the one who beheaded John the Baptist. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.